you. And now we'll hear from our Bangla interpreter.
It's a Urdu.
Urdu, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मैं आप लोगों में जो उर्दू में ये पूरा मीटिंग सुनना चाहता है, उन्होंने आप ये नंबर पे डायल कीजिए 347-966-4114। मैं दोबारा कह रही हूँ 347-966-4114। उसके बाद आप इसी पिन नंबर आप डालें 842-9-893-684। बाद में हैशटैग दीजिए। दोबारा पिन नंबर कह रही हूँ मैं 842-893-684। बाद में हैशटैग डालिए। ठीक है, ओके जी, अल्लाह हाफिज, थैंक यू।
Okay, great. I'm not sure if we want to write the numbers into the chat. So if anyone joins, we can share that throughout. I wouldn't mind sharing that if anyone else joins, and we'll need that information. So while that's coming into the chat.
Can I go ahead with Bengali?
Yes.
শুভ অপরাহ্ন। বাংলাভাষী যে সকল অভিভাবক এখানে উপস্থিত আছেন, আপনারা যদি বাংলায় এই অনুষ্ঠানটা শুনতে চান, আপনারা অনুগ্রহ করে ডায়াল করুন 347-966-4114। আমি আবারও বলছি 347-966-4114। আর আইডি চাওয়া মাত্র আপনারা ডায়াল করতে পারেন 377-634-863 এবং নাম্বার সাইন। আমি আবারও বলছি আইডি 377-634-863 এবং নাম্বার সাইন। ধন্যবাদ। Thank you. It is over.
Thank you so much. So we have our 3 different languages that were shared. So if the interpreters, if you want to put the numbers in and then the code, I see that it's in the chat for Spanish, but if we want to do that as well for Bengali, as well as I didn't the second language that we did was Bengali.
Urdu.
And Urdu.
Urdu.
Say it again.
Urdu. U-R-D.
Urdu. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. I see them in the chat. So please take the time that you need in order to log into the numbers. Okay, great. So I am going to get started. Just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen.
Hi, Miss. This is Bangla interpreter, Nushan. I'm still waiting in the Bengali line. So can you please enter me inside the line, language line?
Would you like to make the announcement?
No, she's waiting to be admitted.
No, thank you so much. Mr. Otin already announced about Bengali.
She's waiting to be admitted into the Bangla line, so that would be Erin would have to do that.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm done.
All right. Is it okay if I get started?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so happy to have everyone here, and welcome to Advocacy Skills for Families. And I like to start by giving a little information about who we are. So the organization in which I represent, my name is Avita Bullen. I am a family educator for IncludeNYC. IncludeNYC is the Early Childhood and School Age Family and Community Engagement Center, so FACE Center, throughout the boroughs of New York City. And so we were founded by 3 moms of students who had intellectual disabilities, and they wanted to provide resources and supports for their children and for the children of New York City to ensure that any student with a suspected or known disability, their families and professionals can have the support that they need. And so we also believe that young people should be fully included within the school, the workforce, and the community, and providing those resources to families is very important to the work that we do. Overall, some of the things of who we are is that we are a staff about 40 odd people, and we provide helpline so families can call in. And on the helpline, they call in and we provide different topics related to special education, as well as workshops similar to the one that I'm going to give today on advocacy skills. So for the sake of time, we're going to jump right into it. So for today's session, we're going to talk about the critical skills for effective advocacy for yourself and for your family and for your children. And so we're going to look over and we're going to go over the 6 critical skills that, as Include working with families, we determined were important for this different effective advocacy. And so those skills include understanding the systems you are working with, knowing your rights and responsibilities, understanding your child's disability, understanding your needs, practicing good organization, practicing clear and effective communication, and then knowing how to really resolve disagreements. And so this activity, advocacy activity tool was shared with you earlier. I believe it was emailed out by Ms. Edwards so we're going to be referring to this advocacy tool throughout. If you don't have it, I know we're close on time, so might breeze through some of these aspects, but it's important to know that if you do need it, I'll give you my email address at the end of this call so that you can, if you need, get a copy of the resources if you haven't received them as of yet. All right, I think, oh, perfect. Thank you, Ms. Edwards, for adding it into the chat. Lovely. Okay. So we have it in English and Spanish. Unfortunately, we do not have it in other languages, but you can always, it's something that we will work on at Include. So when I think about advocacy skills, I always start with this personal example of, so last year, I came home, I checked my mail, and I got a bill for over $3,000 in a tax bill. And I was like, huh? A tax bill? Where is this coming from? And so I had to figure out, where is this bill coming from? And it turns out it was from New York State. And so it was a state tax bill. So it was important to know, who is requesting that I pay these taxes? What is it related to? Who do I call? What information do they need from me? And so I had to I could have just paid the bill, right? And just gotten over it. Or I was able to use the same skills that we think about with advocacy to advocate for myself and understand what I'm being responsible for in order to figure out my responsibilities. So we use advocacy in all aspects of our life. And so we're going to talk about that first component of advocacy now, which is really determining and understanding, what issue am I advocating for? Next slide. All right. So skill number 1 is understanding the systems you are working with. And so it's important when you are advocating for yourself and for others that you are aware of the systems in which you're working for. Advocacy is really understanding who do we need to speak to, why do we need to speak to that person, that group or that organization, and what really needs to be resolved. So in that case of that bill that I had to ensure that it wasn't an incorrect insurance claim. It wasn't like a credit card that was incorrect. I had to really use those transferable skills of figuring out who's really reaching out to me and why. So the first step is really understanding the systems you're working with. So when we think about special education, what organization are you really dealing with in order to who are you dealing with? So we want to think about the Department of Education. So are we working with the teachers in our school? Are we as my issue or my concern with the administration at my school? Or is it with the Department of Education? Is it with OPWDD, Medicaid? So those are public systems that are federally controlled. Or is it with the medical insurance provider or any type of organization or company? So it's really important to understand what system and what organization you are working with. And so when we think about how to plan successfully for that idea, is we want to really understand the system or systems you will seek services from. So if you are a parent looking to have your student receive or your child receive additional services or special education services, you have to understand what services you are seeking. Identify your point of contact. So if there's a paper that you receive and there's a number on that paper, reaching out to make sure you know, is this the point of contact or the person that I'm going to reach out to? Is this the person facilitating this conversation? Then identifying the key language and terminology that is found within those letters. Oftentimes, families call IncludeNYC if they receive information from their school about that specific educational language that they aren't really sure about. You can always reach out to organizations or advocacy groups or that point person themselves to figure out what language is being used. What does it mean? Asking what steps must be taken to get those services for your child, and setting up online accounts if need. So like My Schools, or even having email correspondence with the organization that you were looking into. And then learn about the requirements for eligibility. So as your child gets older, we're going to notice that students aren't entitled to services, but they're eligible. So determining if you are eligible for a service, and then if you are eligible for that service, what documents do you need to be present, and what are the methods for that resolution? So if there is a conflict that is at hand that's happening, is it that you need a mediation? Do you need an appeal, a hearing? Determining these steps will help you be successful while understanding what system you are working with. And so here's an example of that. And so when we think about seeking special education services from the New York public schools, right now no longer Department of Education, we want to think about eligibility is determined by the evaluation process. So we want to think about conducting those evaluations, right? What is that process? Who is the person of contact that you're working with? What assessments evaluations are taking place? If there's a medical diagnosis of condition for your child, how does it impact your child's learning? And also, how is it submitted to the IEP team? And then if you're required to have any independent evaluations by professionals, they must be submitted to the IEP team. So you want to gather information to determine eligibility and making sure that you understand. If we go back here, you want to know what steps must be taken for your child to receive those services. And then you want to know what is the criteria for eligibility and determining, does my child meet those requirements? So you're essentially within seeking services for from New York City Public Schools, you want to really follow those same plans for success for knowing the system that you're working within, and then also understanding what does eligibility look like. So as we know, every system is different, and they are not, all evaluations are not equal. And so New York City's public schools evaluations don't always meet the requirements or criteria for other organizations. So if you are attempting to receive assistance from, let's say, the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, OPWDD, they often do not accept the same evaluations that the New York City public schools do. So it's important to know what the requirement, and if the information or resources you have are the correct, meet the correct criteria for the organizations you're working with. So it's very important to ask specific questions as much as possible and get as much information from the different systems, because they don't always speak to each other and they're not always aligned. Skill 2 within advocacy skills is to know your rights and your responsibilities as a parent. And so I think that it's important to really understand why it's important for you to learn about your rights. And then we're going to also talk about some examples of how you can use that. So knowing your rights is really where you are aware of your rights outlined in the Individuals with Education Act, IDEA, in special education, and understanding that families have certain safeguards that are in place because of the federal law, right, that is protecting students with disabilities and their families, to ensure that they have a free and appropriate education, as well as are placed in a least restrictive environment and no cost to the family. And so when we think about the laws related to special education, we want to make sure that families understand their rights and their responsibilities. We have another session on the 5 rights for families. And so we're not really going to get into it as deeply today. But some of the things that we want to make sure is that families know that that attending workshops like this, reading websites, especially the laws, and being part of parent support groups as well, really does allow for you to learn about your rights and your responsibilities in regards to special education. Reading any available materials, including the Family Guide to Special Education Services. So if you just Google Family Guide Special Education, it will come up, and it's a PDF that's a really great guide from the DOE in New York State, that really outlines the rights that you have as a family, as families of students with disabilities. It's to know your rights is also to just ask questions, right? You have organizations similar to IncludeNYC that you can ask questions about is this legal? Are these my rights? Is this protected under my child's rights? Definitely asking questions, even the most simplest question, can help you learn more about your rights and responsibilities related to special education. And you can also join parent support groups, like I said earlier, and become involved. So becoming a parent member Becoming a parent member is a great way to learn about special education in an in-depth way. But we in IncludeNYC provides training for how to become a parent member. And parent members are well versed on the rights and rights of parents in the IEP process. All right, so we're gonna continue and move into skill 3. So not only is it important to really know your rights, but it's also important to understand your child's disability and understand your needs and what they need, also what you need in order to support them. And so when I think about this slide, I think about it in understanding understanding your child's disability, right? And your need helps you really define and describe and communicate your wishes to obtain from the system that you're working from, right? So if it is you're looking for additional services to support with speech language or to support with a different class placement, it's important to know your child's disability, how it impacts them educationally, and then your needs, the level of support you need in order to navigate the system. There's a lot of parents that we work with that know all about their rights, know all about the special education law, know all about their class placements. And there's some families that don't have that level of understanding and exposure to special education. So definitely understanding where you are in the process and what you need in order to become the best advocate for your child is important to explore. So I would say when we think about being able to explain and understanding your needs is why it is that you really want to make sure that you are concise with really defining and understanding what you want to accomplish when you are advocating for your child. So what is the end goal? So this example I'd love to use, which is you want to understand your child's disability because it helps you. So discuss your child's needs and their strengths clearly. There are some times that you can just write it in. I had a parents write it in their note section on their phone. My child excels at this subject and these activities, but there are some needs for vocational training and reading supports. So being clear about your child's strengths and needs, identifying and advocating for services, assistive technology, and accommodations that your child might need, why they will benefit from it. What evidence do you have of it? Working with your child's school oftentimes, because those accommodations and those supports happen in the school setting. Additionally, influence the type of education and community and medical services your child receives. So being clear about what those are and how they impact your child's disability, or how your child's disability has an impact on the educational setting that they're in, the community, and the medical services that they receive. And then also teach others teaching others who might not understand, right? Ways to interact and support and to engage with your child. So once you understand the disability and you learn more of your child's disability, you learn more about it, you're able to help others as well as your child. So becoming their advocate in response. Another skill that is really important for advocacy is good practice really good organization. And so we have a lot of things going on in life, right? There's a million things that people can do. And so when we think about practicing good organization, it's important to understand that before you start anything, you might run into a conflict. So it's important to keep documentation of what is happening and evidence of it. So if you are attempting to get additional services for your child, and you realize that the first time you interact with the school, they give you a response that, oh, we need to document more, or we can't do that right now. It's important to document those conversations so that you have a clear history of what has been happening. If you're receiving paper or information from the school, you want to follow those procedural steps. So if the evaluation consent form needs to be sent in by a certain date, making sure that you're following through with those requirements and that you're doing that. Additionally, putting things in writing. I am a very big proponent of that. Putting things in writing not only helps you build that documentation, but it also allows you to keep track of where you are within the process of advocating for your child. And it could be simply a recap email, or it could be a note to yourself, or a text message, or a letter that you write to the school. Keeping a log of that is important, as well as communication that you might have with the organization or the system that you're working with. Keeping your records organized in one place is really helpful so that you have it all together. That's not always, not everyone is able to do that, but creating a space where most of us have cell phones, right? Not everyone does, but taking a picture of something and storing it in your phone. As an example, if you can't keep the clutter, I don't really like clutter, so I encourage families, take a picture of it. Make sure that you send an email of it. That electric footprint is really important to keep a log of organizing where you are in the process, and save everything. That goes for like reports, letters, forms, feedback, even rejection letters are also important to keep, to figure out where you are in the process and why you need that. So I'll give that example. So in my tax issue that I was having, I had to go back and find my W-2s, my tax returns, my pay stubs, and I had to go find all of those because they were all related to the system that I was working through and the problem that I was trying to advocate for. And so in regards to special education, you might want to be saving your child's IEPs, their evaluation reports, those assessments that you have, those report cards and progress reports, keeping them together if you need to. We all might. So if you do struggle with organization, it is real, but I wanted to ask, does anyone have any tips about how they stay organized when they're, advocating for something, or they want to keep track of something in regards to their, to special education? Are there any tips out there? You can always add it into the chat. Nice, the folders. Love it. I have my nephews every year. I keep his IEP folder, keep his IEPs in the same drawer, and he knows where it is. And so as he goes into high school, we've had all his IEPs since turning 5 all the way into 8th grade. And so they're all in the same location as much as possible. And I know that a lot of it has been digitized, but keeping folders is a great way to stay organized. Thank you so much, Stacey Ann, for sharing. All right, the next step, stage within a skill that we want to look at for organization is being really clear, practicing that clear and effective written communication. And so And I want to be very transparent that most of the time when we're advocating, it's because we feel like something that we should be receiving or something that should be happening, we've bumped up to some kind of struggle or resistance. And so we can be very frustrated within the system, within the process of advocating, especially for your children. And so I want to acknowledge that that might be a very hard feeling and a very difficult and frustrating feeling. But throughout the process, it is very important to really practice clear and effective written communication as much as possible so that your points can be shared in a very concise and consistent manner. And so when we think about practicing clear and effective written communication, that looks like sending documents to the people who make the necessary changes. So that can be reaching out to the person that is in charge, or if it's a concern at the school classroom level, you can reach out to the teacher or the principal, right? If it's something related to the district, if it's related to something to on the federal level, reaching out to the people that make those changes. You want to make sure that your written communication is signed, date, and include contact information. Make sure that you clearly identify who you are advocating for. So the name, the birth date, the ID number, if you have that, and focus on 1 to 2 issues. In that written communication, you don't want to give a litany of your 95 theses, right? You want to really focus in on 1 or 2 issues that can be addressed, and to make sure your document is no longer than 1 page. And keep copies of all of these, similar to this skill 4 that we talked about, right? Keeping organized. And so when we think about that written, that clear and written communication, a lot of times we think, especially related to special education, like, oh, I said this, I asked for this, I told someone at the school verbally. We want to make sure that we're sharing in written communication. So we're leaving that paper trail, that documented evidence, and it needs to be clear and concise and to the point of what you are asking for and what you need. And it could be something as simple as, a correspondence email of saying, like, after speaking with someone, you could send that email with a recap of that conversation and the next steps that you agreed upon. You can treat it like a thank you note, while at the same time really reminding that person what they promised to do. So it could be something like, oh, it was a pleasure to meet you today. Thank you for agreeing to blank. Thank you for this. We spoke about this. We said the next steps were going to be this, right? You want to mention that you are advocating on behalf of your child, and you want to use that team approach. And I think when we talk about this, we talk about this often, just right? When we say, oh, I need, it's not really what I need, but what does the child need? What can we do to ensure that the child receives these things? Not, I need my child to receive this, but how can we ensure that our child receives the supports that they need? So language plays a part within the communication, and definitely trying to frame in a positive way as much as possible. Although you might be feeling those feelings of frustration, right? And you might be feeling those feelings of, oh, I'm asking for this again. This is a very contentious situation. We want to move from a place of positive intent when we are communicating in the verbal setting, so that we're not shutting down both sides of the conversation. All right. And then moving through, because we have a few activities, but because of the sake of time, I'm going to move through some of our skills here. And so some of that can be when you're practicing that clear and effective spoken communication. So now we're going to move into thinking about not only that written communication, but what does it look like when you're speaking? And I think it's really important to rehearse what you want to say, listen and ask questions. You want to speak clearly. You want to show respect and expect that in return. And then you want to revise and clarify those things as well. It's similar to the tips for a written communication. And within this, if you feel like you're still hitting some roadblocks, skill 6 is very intricate because it's knowing how to resolve disagreements. So we might not get everything we want within a dispute, but acknowledging that that we tend to think of advocacy as solving a problem, but all of these skills essentially will lead for us to be able to solve problems. So the goal is to solve the problem with the least amount of intervention or work. So when we follow these steps from the beginning to end, we want to ensure that we're moving through, coming to a resolution. And so we want to make sure that we talk to the person first, if you have that ability. There are ways to make to solve a problem that can be really simple, right? And we want to think of solutions, not just thinking from my approach, but what is the best solution for the child that we're advocating for? And then how can we work together to achieve that? And use your advocacy skills. Identify the steps that you think will be necessary to solve the problem, and then continue step by step and document as you go what were the roadblocks that you faced. Making sure you are continuing this process. It is not easy. It takes time to establish that change. And we want to make sure that we're know that there's almost always another step that you can take. And then there are formal disputes if you feel like within special education that although we are working towards advocating and resolving a conflict and we're not getting there, there are ways for formal disputes and using the right tools to get the job done. So if you feel like you need a formal disputes, there's a few different ones within your due process rights, which are mediation, impartial hearing, complaints, fair hearings, and appeals. There's more information about that. You can find that on the Include website to learn more about those different options for due process. And we have a training on that as well. I'm going to come back to that, but I always like to think about when we think about advocating is this final quote by Alice Walker. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking that they don't have any. And so I leave you with this, which is knowing that you have the power and you have the ability to advocate and to ask questions and to be curious and to push forward for your child, because that is the power and the rights that you have. So want you to know that you have that power and you have that ability to do so. And I know we sent some of those resources earlier. So thinking about the steps within advocacy, what skills do you hope to improve on? Do you have a strategy in mind that you want to work through out of those 6 different steps? And thinking about what you learned today. So I know that we are close on time. So I'm going to open it up for questions and also to allow Erin some time to also speak. So thank you again for participating. And then we will make sure to send the materials to you as well, so you can refer back to this presentation at any time. And good luck with the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Avita. Can you guys hear me? Great. Yes. Okay, good. I don't know how I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. So thank you so much, Avita. Does anyone have any questions? You can ask in your native language. The interpreters will be able to help you out. So if you have any questions, now's your time. Avita is an amazing resource. So, ask away. As you're thinking about any questions, I will actually, to segue from what Avita was saying, I will be sending out a follow-up email to everybody, not only who attended, but registered. It will include several things. It will include a recording of today's session. It will include worksheets that Avita was talking about during today that I also had dropped in the chat. It will also include an attendance and feedback form. Unfortunately, that is in English. I'm working on getting it in multiple languages. And there will also be flyers for next week's topic, which is understanding my child's program recommendation. I just realized I don't have my video on. Hi. Next week's topic will actually be presented by myself. So I'm eager to share everything that I kind of know about understanding your child's program recommendation, which is next Wednesday, same time, same place. Hopefully no technology challenges. And Avita dropped in the chat, and it's also on this slide, which will be in the video attachment, her or IncludeNYC's contact information. So I guess if nobody has any further questions.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Yes. Oh, we have somebody. Yay.
Yes, my name is Amasha. So I have a daughter in 8th grade. We have to choose the schools, and she has a hearing problem, and she got hearing classes in the school, in the public schools. But on her file, it says she is in a general education, not in a SDW. So that's correct or not?
So I think I don't know your daughter's particular IEP and her case. However, if you feel like the services are aligned to her needs, I would recommend that you can call. I would say you can call us and we can have a longer conversation because there's some information still that I would need. But if you want to call and you can set up a call with our family educators to determine like if you feel like that is appropriate, or if what's the problem at hand. If you feel like her current setting isn't appropriate based on her needs, then we can have a conversation about that. But then that is starting with the conversation at the school level and speaking with your IEP team to really discuss her current setting. So starting with speaking with your daughter's current IEP team.
Yes, I understand. Already I did, but they said she allowed only for general education. And I don't know why.
Right. So there needs to be more explanation and more conversation. So it's okay to request more. Like, I think that question about like asking why and what's the reasons, and also understanding like what you're requesting, what benefits your daughter, and asking what's the rationale from the school team. So I would always say, I always encourage families to start with working with your school team, and then finding out more information about your daughter's disability and how it's impacting her in the school curriculum. Because it might be that the least restrictive setting might be that. But I don't want to get too involved in this one scenario. So you can definitely call the helpline if you have additional questions. But I would say starting with your school's IEP team.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
It looks like we also have a question. I think Andrea L has her hand raised.
Hi, yes. I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but so I cannot remember exactly where I read somewhere in maybe a DOE website or an advocate website where it says that if the school cannot provide the sufficient training for the teachers or staff in the school to be able to help the child with a certain disability, that we are able to reach out to the district specifically to be able to get reimbursement for outside training or for outside services that the child may need because the school is not able to provide that. I'm wondering if you have more information on that or how I could go about it.
Yeah, that is, I think it's that might be a case-to-case basis based on your child's needs, and specifically, and I know, Aaron, you work with district, so you could always jump in, but I know that's a case-by-case need. And so
Mhm.
if it usually happens, that conversation happens at those longer reevaluation meetings where there's like larger decisions made. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. If they can't provide that, then it has to be something that has to be reimbursed. But that will have to be probably communicated with you through the Committee of Special Education and your child's IEP team. So I would want to, as a family and thinking about advocating for your child, making sure you get that in writing and that information before you move to the next steps. But I would say reaching out to the CSE as well as your child's IEP team to make sure that that is the case that they've shared with you and that is confirmed. Because that doesn't.
Yeah, and if I can jump into Evita coming from, so I work with districts 24, 25, 26, 30, and the Queens North High Schools. And you have somebody called an administrator for special ed. We call them AZs. They're usually the people that you can talk to. You can definitely ask your school, or you can even shoot me an email if you like, because you all have my email asking who your AZ is, and I can put you in contact with them. Because what we try to do first is try to find resources inside, of course, the DOE. Then if not, then of course we could definitely discuss if there's any kind of outside sources that we can get, but it's definitely a conversation that we would be willing to have, because we definitely want, I said definitely a lot, I'm sorry. We definitely do want every child to get what they need. So if it's something very specific, you can reach out to the school, you can reach out to me, I can help you connect with your AZ, okay?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think I will reach out to you specifically, only because it's
Sure.
a very specific case.
Of course, yeah.
And I don't think that I've been getting as much of the help. And I have a situation going on where my child's actually getting outside help, but the clinician's collaborating with someone in the school, but the school's not offering that specific help that she needs. So I don't,
Yeah. Okay,
because
yeah.
the school's collaborating with the clinician outside, I feel like there should be some kind of reimbursement there or some kind of consideration, because they can't provide that specifically for her.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about it. Like Evita said, it is very just like their individual IEPs, their individual help too. So we can definitely talk about it. Definitely reach out to me.
Thank you so much.
Does anybody else have any questions? I don't see any other hands raised. Yes, Evita, thank you so much. Thank you. Everybody,
Yeah.
thank you to Evita. I think she did a great job. So again,
Thank you, everyone.
I will be sending out I just have to download the video and I'll be sending it out to everybody by tomorrow morning. All right, and again, thank you to all my interpreters and their patience. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next time will be better.
Sure. Good luck.
All right, thank you. Everybody have a great day, okay?
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Allah Hafiz. Allah Hafiz, Baji.
Thank you.